when you sort of started there with your grandfather Arthur, I heard a lot about Arthur there because he was a dog man.
Yes.
But he would have had a big influence on you at the start, did he?
Yeah, he would have had, I suppose. I spent a lot of time with him as a kid, and he would have been what I would have called a great animal man. He could train a sheepdog, he could train a horse. He was world champion sheep shearer. So he had a lot of things, and a real good horseman, great patience with horses or dogs or whatever, which I suppose has stood to me through what I do now.
Yeah, I was talking to Joe Burnley, the saddler, and he said Arthur was a great man. That there was a show in Dublin Horse Show there, or a class in it, and he said Arthur won it quite a bit in that. And he said
That's
it was a great all rounder. Like.
Yeah, that was a class called the utility class, where a horse had to be driven under a trap, show jump, and sort of load in the trailer and all that type of thing, which is a funny class now, but in those days it was quite a big thing, and I think he won it at least 4 or 5 times. Yeah,
a real all-rounder of a horse you need.
Yeah, you would.
And well schooled.
Yeah, well trained. Yeah.
And when you got started and all, what was your goal? Did you want to be a jumper, or did you want to train? Or
I suppose like every young fella, I thought I was going to be world #1 rider. But I suppose reality set in there after a while, and I always enjoyed the wheeling and dealing part of the business. And anywhere I had worked, that was always part of what we did. We were maybe initially show jumpers, but there was always a buying and selling element to the stable. And I enjoyed that part, and I enjoyed the business part of it, and sort of looking at the horses and thinking what discipline they'd suit, or what customer they might suit. So that was always something I had an interest in.
Yeah. Well, I never knew it was like that. I thought you were all about training, because I was wondering how you were able to produce so many good horses, like so many top end horses.
Yeah, well, that's something that's it develops over time, and there's a lot of talk of having a good eye for a horse and this, that, and the other. And yeah, maybe you do, but I think if you make enough mistakes, spend enough of your own money, and lose it, you soon develop an eye. So that's taken a while, but we have a fairly finely tuned system now, but we still buy some horses that don't work, and we have to sell in the year, and we sell them, try not obviously to sell them into our main client base. We'll use various different ways, swap them in with guys, or sell them to other dealers or whatever. So no matter how good you're at it, I think you're not being true to yourself if you're not some of them won't work.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. All right, I tell you what I was wondering. See, I hear with the sheepdog fellas, and all the time I hear it, it's very hard to get the good ones. And like, I assume it's the same with horses. Yet, how do you keep coming up with them?
So I suppose it is exactly the same with the horses, definitely. But I think I do a lot of travelling. When I say travelling in Ireland, a lot of driving. I have a lot of contacts, and I've guys all over the country at those little shows watching for horses for me. If they see a nice one, they'll ring me. Some of the guys, they'd buy it on my behalf. More of them would just give me a tip off to go and look at it.
Yes.
And they get a small commission per horse. But for a guy that's probably going to the show anyway, it's a nice way for him to earn some money. And for me, I can't be at every show in Ireland.
Yes.
I try to be at a good few of them, but I can't be at all of them. So I have a good network of guys watching for me, and travel a lot. I travel a couple of 2, 3, 4 days a week, depending on how many clients are coming to the yard, to make that possible. Because we need to buy. We sell horses every week, so we need to buy horses.
How many horses would you sell in a year?
We'd sell about 100 every year.
Oh, yeah. So you've got to buy a lot of horses.
Yeah. So we sort of we'd have about 100, we sell about 100, and we buy about 100.
Yes.
Every year. It's slightly changed, and of that, to get back to our not always getting about 10% of them. So about 10 of them a year don't work.
Yes.
For lots of different reasons, maybe soundness, trainability, just not quite good enough, whatever.
Yes.
But we're lucky with our client base that we have we've many of the top riders in the world.
Yes.
Buy off us, but we have to have the product to get me, and they'll buy it. Like Oliver Townend, who's world #1, bought a horse here. I'd say it took him 5 minutes the other day, because he trusts me and I trust him, and we know how it works together. But that's, as I say, they're great customers to have, but you have to have the product.
Well, here's another question I have for you. So you go out and or one of the fellas finds you a good horse at a show, and you bring him back and all, and you can see there's potential now, and he's a decent horse.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, surely. Like, you have to bring it on, and
so a lot of times horses stay here an average of about 3 months.
Yeah, what's
Okay,
that all?
so
Yeah.
but that does mean some leave the next day,
Yes.
others would stay, a year or more, and the ones that the the way I suppose we add value is that we train them. I have very good riders who train them to go in a very classical way. So when a client comes in to try them, they can get up and they can ride the horse and he goes well. When they arrive, we do their teeth. We normally reshoe them, we worm them, we copper shot them, we clip them. We
Yeah.
do and that first week is nearly our biggest spend on a
Oh,
horse.
yeah.
Weekly spend, we'll say.
Yes.
First week he arrives, he gets all that done. So he's it's amazing. In 2 or 3 weeks, those horses can turn inside out because they probably always had a few worms. They were always a bit lacking in copper. They maybe always had sort of sore teeth.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all of a sudden, it all comes together.
And they're had to get the makeover.
Yeah, the makeover for all the world, and then the training on top of that.
Yes.
So it makes it really does present them as a new product. And then some of the horses we compete, and other horses that would be greener, we just get them schooled. But we have the horse in a position where the client can try it sufficiently to buy it off us.
Yeah.
Because I'll buy a horse jumping a pole in a ditch,
Yes.
but my clients won't.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you get me? So that's
Yes. You
that-
have to get them to a point where they're buyable for our clients.
Exactly, and in fairness to clients, regardless of even the price of the horse, if you have an American client coming here, it's a good to 10 grand to get that horse home.
Yes.
So they can't be taking too much of a chance.
Yes.
If I buy him in Limerick, it takes me an hour and a half to get him home, or 2 hours.
Yes.
It's a huge investment in. So they need to be able to assess the horse to a further extent than I do.
You need to take as much risk as you can out for them and help
Exactly.
them to buy it then.
Exactly. Yeah, and some of my clients, bigger clients from the States, there would buy those greener horses, but they leave them with me.
Yes.
And they'd ring, they'd say, keep him for 3 months, Richard. And if he's still as good as we think he is, put him on a plane.
Yes.
And if he's not, we'll have a swap back for another one or something.
I know what you mean. So they can they can reduce the risk a bit that way. Yeah.
Reduce the risk, exactly. Yeah.
Here's a problem I have with dogs sometimes.
Yeah.
And you must come across it where I have a dog that I really like and I know he's capable of doing big stuff. But if I sell him and I don't give him to the right person, I'll get him back and they'll say he's not this and he's not that. And I know, he can be the real thing. What do? You must get horses like that.
Oh,
too.
absolutely, and we all have some returns every year, and quite a few of them are like that. In fact, I would argue a lot of the very talented horses, I'd say maybe the same with dogs, can be the more difficult ones until they get to a certain stage, and then they seem to or maybe always a bit more difficult, but they're, if you know how to work them, they're ultimately very good. Yeah. So you do come across that. I suppose we do one or two things. We either sell them to a client that has similar knowledge to ourselves, so they hopefully are happy with them and can reach their potential, or we train them to further.
Yes.
And sort of have their talent secured a bit before we sell them.
Yes. Get it nailed down a bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the sheepdogs, my thing is very amateurish by comparison, and so I get in dogs there, and some of them maybe I don't get around to training them, and they're getting a bit older, and I need to do something with them soon before they go past their sell-by date a bit, and so that's usually the motivation for me is I better go and do something with him, and I know he's really good and all, but I need to get him up to that point that the customer can see it. That's what I wonder when I see you and you're doing those kind of numbers and all, and I know you have the girls here and you have your team, but how do you keep getting them to all kind of arrive at the right time to have a choice of horses from it and not have people come and saying, Richard, I want a horse, and you say, I won't have him for a month there.
Well, sometimes people do ring, and I have to say, listen, you can't come for a couple of weeks or a month. That does happen, definitely, and there'll be even clients this minute. There's a few clients there that I need horses for, and I just don't have them. I either don't have them at all, or I don't have them quite right. So that does happen. But the main thing is numbers, and we have a stock list, and it's handed to me on a regular basis, and go through it, and that one needs to go here, and that one needs to do that, and keep them. It's just a system, and keep at them. And I would spend a couple of mornings a week with the riders here and look through the horses, and that horse needs a break, that horse needs. But and again, it's a little bit of a numbers thing. If you have enough of them, then there's a certain number that are ready to sell. I would say. So that I would say that's it. But it's a lot of waking up early in the morning and making lists.
There's another thing I wondered about. I saw you working with Ian earlier, and I was wondering, like, do you have to? Is it something that does work educate you, or do you go outside for help? I asked you before about advisors and that. Can you help yourself along? When
Yeah,
like
you
that?
can help yourself. At my own job, my main job within this business is, I suppose, buying and selling the horses and the management that goes in between those two spots, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I get a whole lot of help with those three bits.
Yes.
But as concerns training the horses and stuff like Ian was doing there today, I would obviously look to the likes of him, and
Yeah.
we use other trainers for dressage and cross country and so on. There's other trainers come for that to keep the horses on form and to keep the girls on form, because the horses, you have to have world class riders yourself if you're
Yes.
selling to world class riders, you know.
Yes.
So that's a big thing. But I know all the good show jumping guys and so on, and eventing guys in Ireland and England. And if I had come across a horse that I'm, really struggling, I'm sure you'll come across a dog that won't go right. We'd have horses that jump right, we'll
Yeah.
say. And you do the usual things, and Jenny, he still won't go right, or he's still jumping right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of lads I could ring or talk to, likes of Ian. Jenny, I have this horse, and I do that regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think that's an important thing for people to do if they're at a bit of a stumbling block, to go and just get a bit of advice?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, because there's a lot of people, and I always say, don't get advice from the lad down the road.
Yes.
Get advice from the best man you can.
Yes.
You can ring the world number one. You ring him,
Yes.
because he's got to know more than the lad down the road.
Yeah.
I'm always preaching that to why do the thing just because the other lad's doing it. Look at the best lad and do what he's doing.
Yes.
That's what I try to.
Well, it's funny. I agree with you. Go
Yeah.
from 0 to 60 straight away if you can, or buy
absolutely.
the best fella you can afford. Like that.
Absolutely, because those guys, there's a reason they are what they are. It's not by accident.
Yeah,
you know?
well, this is the thing. I was talking to a sheepdog fella, Alistair McRae now, and he'd be a famous fella in it. And
Yes.
we were just saying that, good advice, you might have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But he said, bad advice, you really have to pay for
Yeah,
it.
bloody sure. No, that's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And I've always been that way thinking. I always look. I don't know, it was my grandfather or whatever, but I don't know. Somebody must have advised me along the way. Look to the best man you can get a hold of, and try and learn off him. And to this day, I'd go to shows, and if there was a real good rider warming up the horse of that, and I didn't have one I needed to be looking at, or I wouldn't go off drinking coffee. I'd go and watch him.
Yes.
And Jenny, maybe that horse at home, if we did that with him,
Yes.
it'd improve. Try and
Well,
figure
it's funny.
Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of top sheepdog fellas,
Yeah.
and I ask them all how to learn and all.
Yeah.
And they might ask somebody things
Yeah.
and all. Like you said there, they're always out watching the good fellas.
Yeah.
And seeing what they can be.
Watching them, and then as your knowledge increases, you're watching, you can see more.
You understand more.
You
of what
understand
you're
it
looking
better.
at.
Yeah, definitely.
And when I was here last week, I was talking to you, and you said to me that sometimes, a horse has a lot of work in him, and there's plenty of going in him, and you can really train him, and that a lot of it is just sort of repetition.
Yes.
And, and you can make him good with repetition and just putting in the work, like.
Yeah, not every horse. No, it's different, I'm sure, with dogs. Not every horse, but I would say 80% of horses are repetition.
Yeah.
80% of horses are left-handed. They go
Yes.
left easier than they'll go right. And the same thing, 80% of them repetition. Just train them. But you must train them for a horse anyway. It has to be sort of a relaxed environment where he thinks. And I'm not talking about now, when I say relaxed, I don't mean the birds singing in the trees and the thing. I mean that you might have to work him and get the energy down a bit.
Yes.
And then train him. You might canter about and do various things that are not on the thing you want to train him.
Yes.
Just to bottom out a little bit, and then train him, because he's thinking then and he
funny,
remembers.
We do that a bit with the dogs there, and we work them off a bit first, especially
Yes.
when it's a little bit worked up or has a lot of work in them.
A fresh. We call them a fresh horse.
Yeah, fresh. Yeah, well, a fresh dog, and
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of them could be a little bit one-sided, left-handed.
Yes,
or right.
yeah.
And but we try and work off that bit of tension, or a bit of a buddy of mine called it adrenaline. Work
Yes,
that off,
yes.
and then they're in a position to learn down, the mind relaxed.
Yeah, 100%. Well, a horse would be exactly the same, I would say, in that matter. And I think I often see lads trying to train horses when they're fresh. And I'm not saying they don't train them, but it takes double the time.
You kind of have to fight, though, don't you?
Yeah,
It's
you
more
do.
of a fight than.
You do. We call it riding the bucket.
Yeah.
Because the feed is all you're riding. You know, you're not riding the horse, you're riding the boat,
Riding
riding the
down the
bucket.
petrol, yeah.
So you ride off the bucket and then train them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And you think though that some people make that mistake to try and force it into them, and if they had it, like you said, write it off a bit first and let it seep into them, that it works better.
Definitely.
Or you'd have a better attitude from your
Definitely, and a thing that's really coming in. So, in my opinion, the show jumping guys, we do mainly event horses, some jumpers, but the show jumping guys, they're very, very clever with their training, and I would look to them a lot for my ideas and different things. But our whole business will be based on how show jumping dealers do it, is what we're trying to do. You know, but the they're a new thing a little bit with them is if they're having a problem with the horse, that they'll work them, try and get through the problem, and then give him 20 minutes standing in the cross ties. And what I say by that, what I mean by that is he goes out and the cross ties is just where he's just tied, he's standing relaxed, and leave him there, maybe ride your other horse that you don't need to do that much work with, 20 minutes will do him, and hop back on him and do it again. I hear quite a few of them talking about that.
Yes.
And it's a funny, interesting, we did one horse here, a little bit of a challenging horse we did with here last week. We did it a couple of days, and I think it made a big difference. So I don't know now whether it work with a dog or not, but it seems to work with the horses, you know.
A friend of mine, well, he's not around anymore, one of the old-fashioned boys, and he was training for a Supreme, but for about 2 months before, he'd take the dog out, and it was a little bit of a difficult dog, but he'd take it out maybe 5, 6, 7 times a day for 15 minutes, and every time he'd go back out, the dog would be a little bit more relaxed and get back into the way he wanted to work, rather than fight with it or boss it.
No, I think that definitely works with horses. It's always, or animals, I suppose. It's always they can't really answer you back, so you have to be clever and try and think what they're thinking. And my grandfather always said to me with horses, if you're going to do something with the horse, they don't wear watches, like. So either allow a lot of time or don't start. One and the other. But I always remember that. Don't wear watches, Richard. He said. So it's true.
Monty Roberts, I heard him saying that if you've only got 15 minutes to do a job, it'll take all day. But he said if you go out and act like you've got all day, it'll only take 15 minutes.
Yeah, very, very true thing.
Him and Arthur, I think we're on the same page.
Maybe on the same page on that one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I thought, when you had so many horses to put through and you've, deadlines to meet or you have to keep them moving, that I thought you'd just sort of bang it into them or sort of put them through the factory, but it's not like that.
No, look at it. Of course, we have a bit of a system and whatever, but unfortunately, horses, no different to dogs, they're all different personalities and whatever, and some can be hot and some can be cold and some are, fresh and some aren't. And so, but what we try to do is assess that, what they are, quite quickly, and then work them, and that's it. So that gives us an idea from the kick-off. We'll say if a horse is here a couple of weeks, right, he's a horse we're going to need to spend 2 months on. Here's a horse here 2 weeks, we can sell him next week. Do you get me? I think that probably is quite a thing I do sometimes when you go into a lot of yards and they're, Jenny, we're not sure what he is, and you go back 2 months later, we're not sure what he is. Whereas if I had him 2 months and I wasn't sure what he was, I'm in bother.
He's too long. How do you go about matching up riders and horses? Because that's the one I'm thinking about with sheepdogs all the time, is to match them up. Because I want whoever buys me dog, I want them to be happy with the dog.
Of course.
I want them to get the most out of the dog.
Of course, and exactly the same with us. In fact, it's our whole business is teetering on that edge. They have to. A certain percentage of them have to go well and win at a big level and whatever to keep people coming and keep the show on the road. That's a thing, I suppose. So one thing is, a lot of the regular clients, you get to know what horses they like, and you temperament wise and ability wise and whatever else wise. So that's maybe a slightly easier one. You know what they want. Then the people that arrive, again, it's a bit like what I was talking about earlier, the eye for a horse. You do enough of it, you get in on it. You watch somebody ride. Like if I have a new client coming that I don't really know what their real abilities are, whatever, I always put them on an easy-ish horse first. Have a look at them ride it. See, Jenny, they're good, bad, or indifferent, whatever, or they, they're going to need one that they can really put a lot of leg on, or they're going to need one that they're not going to put a leg on. I suppose it'd be like you. Some lads shout and roar at the dogs, other lads don't. You'll know that more or less immediately. And then try and have, but that's again why it's very important for us to have a good old selection of horses around. Like an American client there last year, and she had bought the horse off the video, and I wouldn't let her have the horse off the
Yes.
video. I said, you may come in and try the horse, because
Yeah.
she was a very nice lady, lovely people, but a little more amateur rider,
Yeah.
you know. And she came in, and the horse she bought off the video for me, she couldn't ride, not a hope
Yes.
of riding him. So luckily I had another horse here at the time, and we were able to more or less just transfer over.
Yes.
And she took that horse and loves the horse. But again, that's, you know, it's a matter of being able to assess it good and quick. And then I was lucky on that occasion that I had more or less exactly
Yes.
actually in the next stable.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that doesn't always happen. But
No.
but it's just, I'd imagine with the dogs, you know, people coming along, you know, some lads, I don't know, waving to other lads, you know, it just depends. Certain dogs would take it and certain won't, you know.
And the with the dog thing now, the thing I always see, now maybe it's only the way I see it, but I think people are kind of all impressed with, you know, it looks nice, it's working nice, and it has a nice name, and it's by a nice dog, and my friends know who it's by, and all this kind of thing.
Yes.
Do you have to deal with all that stuff,
Yeah.
or are people just... Can they
No, we do deal with a lot of that. We do deal with a lot of that, and there's a lot of different opinions on the breeding and the thoroughbred blood that you need and you don't need, and various things. But again, that's a bit, again, certain customers, you know that horses are gonna have to be 60% thoroughbred for them to buy them.
Yes.
Other customers probably don't care. Other customers prefer if they weren't.
Yes.
You know, so again, it's a selection of horses to have, and and if you've only one type, you may only have those type of clients in for that few weeks period.
Yeah.
And get the others in then, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll just ask you about, and I don't know if it's that relevant to sheepdogs, and just maybe you've told me a bit about it before now, and I just think it's interesting. We have health issues now with sheepdogs, or well, we make things into issues anyway.
Yes.
And I see people, and they're steering away from this because it's a carrier of this, and it's not clear for that.
Yeah.
Like when you go to vet a horse, I think you told me before, like it's nearly impossible to get, or you'd be nearly impossible to buy horses if they all had to be clear for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
So with horses, when we buy a horse, they're vetted and x-rayed. So vetted means they check their eyes, their heart, their wind, they gallop them, listen to their wind, they flex their legs, so that sort of involves holding their leg up for a period of time, then they drop. So if the horse is really sound, he should be able to bang his foot down and trot on, the same as if his leg wasn't held up. And we trot them on the circle, on a hard circle. So that would show if there's any bit of weakness through their back or around the thing, that you would see it there.
Yeah.
And then they have the x-raying. So they x-ray all their joints, 2 or 3 views of each joint, being their fetlocks, their ankles, like their hocks, their spine now is quite a big one, and their naviculars in front, which is their front feet.
Yes.
So as the world is getting more and more educated about these x-rays, they're becoming a little bit less influential. There was a stage where the horses, if the x-rays weren't perfect, it was no go. But now you can buy a horse with a little, you know, maybe an extra little channel in his navicular, or a little small chip, or little OCD, and people will still, you know, anybody that's sensible with a sensible vet. Because the simple fact of the matter was they were missing too many good horses over it, and then sure there'd be 6 months down the road, there's that horse I saw and he's flying, and not a bother on him.
Yeah.
So it's very important, I think, for them. Like most of the professionals have very sensible vets.
Yes.
And then there's some vets no different to ourselves. You know, they don't like certain things, and if I know the horse had a little thing and the person's vet's not going to work with it, I won't show them that horse.
Yes,
Do you know?
yes.
But if you were looking for perfection, you'd never buy a horse.
Yes,
So you have to.
What would you
you've
be
to
saying? That don't throw the baby out with the bathwater there. Just use a bit of common sense. like.
Exactly. And obviously you don't buy a horse with a big, huge chip inside in its joint,
Yes.
or a massive big OCD lesion, or a fused back, or whatever. You know, obviously. But I think if you were going, you know, this horse has to have a perfect set of x-rays. Now we do, certainly. I'd say probably maybe, I don't know, 60% of what we buy would nearly have a perfect set. But there are others that have a little chip or a little OCD, little things that are never going to bother the horse in any way. Might bother an odd client, or more so an odd client's vet.
Yes.
But look at, we sell them again.
Yes,
Somebody else
yes.
buy them, you know.
Yes. No, that's interesting. And see, we have similar stuff with sheepdogs, and where they might be carriers or whatever.
Yes.
And people steer away from. And see, my fear would be then, well, sure, if we leave out all those good dogs there, or we start to put some aside, the gene pool will get smaller, and we could end up with a bigger problem later on,
absolutely.
trying to avoid a small one. Like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm going to finish it up now, but I was wondering, like, I have some little kind of golden rules to myself with the dogs and all, and you've been at it a long time now. You must have a few things that like, for example, I often think there, the worst dog I could keep is a nearly dog,
Yes.
because he's taking the place of a good one coming in, like.
100%, yeah. Yeah, well, look at we have, Jenny, I have a good few rules now, and I suppose I try to keep on them, but you do, and you look at, you buy a couple, and you think to yourself, Jenny, I should have known that the last time now.
Yeah.
Why have I another one of these standing there looking at me,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that. So, again, it's the old eye for the horse thing, isn't it? You do enough of it, you get in on those things, and certain rules, you do something, maybe training a horse someday, and geez, that didn't work out, I really shouldn't do that again. No
Yeah.
different to
Yeah.
with dogs, I'm sure you have to. And I think if you're not like that, you're not really going anywhere.
No.
You need to be like that,
No, and I suppose you need to be, like you said, there's 10% of them aren't going to work there, and just get over it and accept it. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, well, you're quite right, taking the place of a good one, and that's bar a horse is able to earn his money per week in the stable. He's a waste of time having there.
Well, I'm going to cut to the chase now. Like, you're the only fella I know, and there might be one or two other ones, but you're the only one I know that's able to do this successfully on a big scale and all. You must have some little secret there, some golden
Sure, I
rule.
can't tell you.
I'm trying to figure out how you get to be in the 1%. Like,
I don't know. I think not afraid of hard work. I suppose be a horseman of sorts, and don't look at the lad down the road.
yeah,
Look bigger.
look where you're going.
So I would have looked at people, and funny, I've actually ended up doing business with them. There's a horse of theirs out there this minute, but the guys called Emil and Paul Hendricks. They're Dutch guys, but they are very, very, very successful show jumping dealers, and they're dealing with the sons of the guys their dads were dealing. Their two dads were dealing,
yes.
and they, just sell an enormous amount of horses every year, and for a lot of big money horses, And I always looked at them as, Jenny, could I do this, or could I get close to doing it? We'll say, and I think if you have the work ethic, a bit of know-how, and watch the right man, you have a chance. And then boot down, then keep going.
Yeah. Well,
So-
listen, thanks very much for talking to me. That's been fierce interesting there.
No worries, Paddy. Thank you.
I might have to quiz you up again here
No,
now
that's
when I
all
turn
right.
off the camera.